Escaping severe poverty. Sometime around 1910, Caroline Hajnos, a teenager, left her family forever and moved alone to America. For a Polish peasant girl, it must have seemed like she was heading to the moon. This is the only known photograph of Caroline in her youth, her wedding picture in Chicago. These people were my grandparents. They were from close Polish villages overseas, but met here in America. My grandpa died in a car accident when I was a baby. Although I grew up with grandma around, I never knew anything about where she had come from. Zero. No one ever told me anything about the place, and I never inquired about it. Her 10 children and many grandchildren, like myself, were too absorbed, I guess, with being Americans. Grandma lived to be 83. It wasn't until she was long gone that I reached the stage where I started to wonder about who she was, and in some strange sense, who I was. This story really begins, though, when my mother found some old envelopes from Poland in my grandmother's papers. We decided to write to the return addresses, despite the fact that the last one was mailed over 35 years ago. Did we have any relatives over there? Would they be interested in hearing from us? Were there any signs of life in what, for me, was an absolute void? Well, one thing led to another, and I eventually made my own kind of immigration back to the Podhale, the area in Poland where Grandma had come from, and Rogoznik, her village, places she left now over a century ago. I moved in with my grandmother's sister's daughter's daughter and her husband and their 2 young kids. I didn't speak Polish, and they didn't speak a word of English. I guess you could say it was going to be a challenge to find what I was looking for. The following is the result of that journey. This is what I found that I didn't know.
Grywał na wiersysku, grywał na wiersysku, grywał na dolinie. Głos weselo serce góralskiej dziewczynie. Głos weselo serce góralskiej dziewczynie. Hej, przysełby Janice!
Ty przy tym hej, zaraz tracisz powietrze.
No właśnie.
Ej, przysełby Janice! Jej
This is where my grandmother came from, the Podhale. It's a small area in southern Poland, roughly 20 miles by 20 miles, along the mountains that border Slovakia, the highest land in this part of Europe, first settled in the 13th century. In Polish, pod means under, and hale means mountain meadow. In Polish society at large, the Podhale is famous for a variety of myths and legends well known in mainstream literature. Throughout the centuries, the area was remote and even dangerous, a kind of Polish Wild West with brigands and outlaws, and remains one of the best-known regions in this country. The people who live in Podhale territory are called Gorale, the Highlanders. Their origins are still debated. Perhaps some came down from northern Poland, or maybe many herded sheep here all the way from Romania. Whatever the case, the Gorale have always been a shepherd and farmer society. The mountain fields were used for grazing, but farming was tough. The soil was bad. The climate is harsh. The winters are long and severe. High winds have been known to knock over entire groves of trees, and in steeper areas there are avalanches. Because of such difficult conditions, the region has a long history of immigration, people leaving the area looking for work. The Podhale is a very small place, and since centuries past, there really hasn't been enough land and food to sustain a growing population. With each generation, the land was divided and subdivided. Children inherited less and less of already strained resources. In the old days, it was common for men to walk 300 miles to parts of Hungary, looking for seasonal jobs. I discovered that my grandmother's father did this, and both my grandparents, coming to America for better prospects, were part of this tradition. Whatever else the Podhale has been known for, it also has a past reputation for great, great poverty. Dobry.
On nas pryka tych zdjęć, nie?
Hi. 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 Hi.
Wiśta, jo. A wiesz co?
Z Bogiem. Jasnym pewnym.
O, gdzie idziesz? Na stój idę, gdzie idziesz? O, stój. Stój czy nie? Stój. Stój. Stój idę. Stój idę.
Płakaj, Madziu, śmiej się, a mama.
Ewie to by można zdobyć.
Nie płakaj tu, no. Patrz, mama ci tutaj weźmie, obieraj, no.
This is the family that was generous enough to host me for an entire year. Anna is my distant relative. Zbyszek, and it took me a long time to learn how to pronounce his name, is her husband. It's Wigilia, a traditional Christmas dinner, and Zbyszek is passing out some blessed bread pieces to his kids, Kinga and Jeszek. I owe a lot to these people. They didn't speak English, and although I struggled to learn some elemental Polish, and there's a Highlander dialect, communication wasn't really a problem. If there's goodwill on both sides, people understand each other. With the support of this family, Every day I was able to wander the land of my lost heritage, looking for clues to understand their and my grandmother's world. But imagine, if some unknown, distant relative from across the world called you up one day to ask if he could live with you for a year, what would you probably say?
Będzie zdjęć, nie?
Nie tu, Mateusz, weź ją. Mateusz, weź ją. Trzymaj ją na. Bez teraz tu zwrócimy i...
There are still places in the Podhale that have old-style traditional homes with a distinctive architecture, and such buildings are appreciated with preservation efforts. But most of the houses in the Podhale today are big and multi-storied. This is largely the result of the impact of immigration money, earned in other countries in a long historical process that still continues. Typically, many immigrants plan to someday return home and enjoy the fruits of their far-off labor. But many do not, and big homes sit empty or are never even finished. One of the surprising discoveries I made in the Podhale was this small log house on the right. It was the home where my grandmother was raised as a child, although half of it, the so-called White Room, had long ago been sold for its traditional architecture and moved to another region in Poland.
Sto lat, niechaj żyje nam. 100 lat, niechaj żyje nam. Niech żyje nam, niech żyje nam. 100 lat, niechaj żyje nam. Niech żyje nam, niech żyje nam. 100 lat, 100 lat, 100 lat, 100 lat, niechaj żyje nam.
Ej, kiedyśmy się zeszli, napijmy się razem. Ej, ta nasza ojczyzna, łakuta zarazem.
Ej, dom złotaty, spoczywnych tater, ej, poduje horny wiater. Ej, poduje, leci z nowiną, se nosiną z doliną. Ej, poduje, leci z nowiną, se nosiną ku doliną. Na samym brzezie Janicek jedzie, 4000 chłopców wiezie. 4000 chłopców góroli, eściu bogami mamo soli. 4000 chłopców góroli, eściu bogami mamo soli.
Tak, tyś jest mój. Tak. Biorę ta myska. Tu. Myska leci. O. Aj tak. Jo.
Mnie się na widziają bym chciał.
There's a tradition that used to be fairly common in some areas of the Podhale. At a certain time in summer, families used to ride out in their wagons to the bog, a swampy land that is the remains of an ancient forest, to dig for winter fuel. After it dries, it burns. In the old days, not so long ago, many couldn't afford the luxury of coal, and this was the poor man's heat source. Just about every family in some villages would gather here. Today, just a handful use this resource. In the past, this work was a communal event, accompanied by bantering, camaraderie, and robust singing.
Kotka. Ucieknie ci? Nie ucieknie. Jaki kotek?
Niech będzie pochwalony Jezus Chrystus.
Mnie bardzo w podłym mieście narodził się w ubóstwie Pan stworzenia wszego.
Twoje bądź wola Twoja, jako w niebie, tak i na ziemi. Chleba naszego powszedniego daj nam dzisiaj i odpuść nam nasze winy, jako i my odpuszczamy naszym winowajcom i nie wódź nas na pokuszenie, ale nas zbaw ode złego. Amen.
Co?
Nazwa cepy. Ziarno.
Ziarno.
Na ziarno. Jeśli on nie mieć ziarna i chciał, żeby kura miała co jeść, on wziąć jeden snopek i tak. To miało inną nazwę po góralsku. Wiesz, że ja już nie wiem? Tarcica, coś takiego nazwa była. Dawno było specjalne koło, gdzie się kręciło.
One of the few people who spoke English in the village where I lived was Andrzej, a distant relative of mine. He learned to speak English, limited of course, by reading a self-teach book about the subject. It was published in America in 1914 and was mailed by my grandmother to her sister, who was Andrzej's grandmother. My grandmother left this place nearly a century ago, and talking to Andrzej, I discovered that the pressures in this community over the centuries hadn't really changed.
This is in America now. This come back only 2 years, but come back. This now live in America. This now live in America. This also live. This also. This also. This also. This also not America residence. This is also residence. This is in Italy. This is Krausów. This is America, yes, this. Because I no contact with him. I have nowadays no contact. I live alone nowadays. Nowadays it's changing. I must looking new friends.
I met this man, an expert at making traditional Highlander clothes, and learned about him from his daughter, who had long ago immigrated to America and was back in the Podhale, just for a visit.
He was growing in raised by his uncle, because his mom, he was 2 years old when his mom, she left him. She went to United States and she never came back. She was living there, she died there, and she's buried over there in the United States. I remember when I was a little girl, we used to go to church. We go with bare feet to church. We carrying the shoes in the hands. Then next to church, we have with shoes some kind of rag. We wipe we wipe them feet, put the shoes on, then we went to church with the shoes. Otherwise, we walk with bare feet to church when I was a little girl.
Ale jutro jest niedziela i można zamówić księdza polowego, bo jest świąt polowy.
No, to jest jeszcze życzę.
Ja by się nam w górę podniosło, rzemiosło jak za dawnych lat.
Kiedyś nos poczekał za rozbę
Jo! Jo!
Podhale singing is usually loud. This stems from the shepherd tradition, when people sang across valleys to one another, or to one's own echo. The region also had a history of highway bandits. The most famous brigand was Janaszek, an 18th century Robin Hood character known throughout the mountains in both Poland and Slovakia. This old dance is one of the most famous from the Podhale, the robber's dance.
To się chce z nami bić.
To się chce z nami bić!
Może się spróbować, będą się upłaszczyć, torbie marynować, będą się upłaszczyć, torbie marynować.
Every year, on Easter Monday, people throughout Poland celebrate a mischievous tradition known as Śmigus, or Śmigus Dingus. It supposedly has roots in ancient pre-Christian fertility rituals and purification rites. The idea these days is to drench an unsuspecting friend or relative with water. It is also, of course, a popular excuse for boys to chase girls and get their undivided attention.
Tego jakbym cię łapił, rozumiesz, to by ci powyrywał nogi z dupy, rozumiesz?
Co się was tu nam chodziło?
A ty se podrośnie z Jezusicku słodkim, pogozymy tobie, karosą środki i miał eleluje, kaworek króluje, hej kolenda, kolenda. I miał eleluje, kaworek króluje, hej kolenda, kolenda.
Siedzi to śmiecie. Darła korekę w dosek i koszulkę białą. Ale już cię pletkę rodzie utulę.
Moi kochani, ja nie wiem, co ona to ta wtedy ze mną zrobiła. No jak taką wielkaczną smatkę wiązała, to mi już na końcu nie starczała. Ma pani ondulację i lakierowanie, ze stuchy pani nic nie zostanie.
Wandering around the Podhale's hills and valleys, away from the villages, I never found any fences or any no trespassing signs. At first, I naively attributed this to a Highlander recognition of a communal right to open spaces, respect for freedom of travel and all that. But I eventually learned that it would be impossible to fence everything up. Each of these narrow strips of land may have a different owner. In other words, a parcel might be 15 feet wide and stretch for a mile. A farmer has one strip here, another down the valley, a little corner maybe on the other side of the next village. How did this incredibly inefficient system happen when a family, like their neighbors, might have 30 different narrow sections of land scattered in pieces all over the area? Over the centuries, Children inherited their fair share of property, and every generation the family holdings get broken up further, sliced and delineated. Sometimes husbands and wives bring in property to the union from different village regions. This tradition guarantees added work and travel to tend the fields and a certainty that, beyond the problems of bad soil and weather, most Highlander farms cannot economically compete with farm systems elsewhere.
No bo pięknie Paweł z tyle będzie, no będzie widzieć. Szczery jest to konia w głowę.
Nie wyjście.
No nie róbcie sobie. Dość już.
Do tego, do tego.
Chodź do góry. No.
No, że mi nie nachra tam się okręci.
Nie ogół.
No nie ogół, nie słyszę, nie bugada, to nie słyszą. Panie, hej, patrzcie teraz. Hej, tu. Czekaj, cię nie widzi, leżę. To nie słyszy, bo pępek ci zatkane. Czekaj, to ci a tak to on nie.
No ale to tak, tam jak napisze, powinni wiedzieć, nałoż wino do Krausowa.
One day, when I was visiting Andrzej, he brought out something that was amazing to me. Photographs. A big pile of old photographs. He wanted to know who these people were in relation to me. Over the years, along with used clothing, my grandmother had sent her sister, who was 8 years old when Grandma left her, these pictures. I was stunned by their content. They were my cousins, uncles, aunts. There were pictures of my own nuclear family, my dad, my mom, and there were pictures of me. My grandma had written the names of everyone on the back of each image. I felt strangely embarrassed by all this. All my life, I never knew that people in Poland even existed, and they had a photographic history of us, their distant kin, who lived in total ignorance of them on the other side of the world.
Śpiewają, a śpiewają.
A co ty tam położysz? To nie wiesz, co się przyznać. Nie ma, płacz mnie za
Czego się ty lękasz, czego się ty lękasz, duszyczko kochana? Nie bójże się, nie bój, ja jestem przy tobie. Ja stróżem aniołem, ja stróżem aniołem, powiadam ja tobie. Ja stróżem aniołem, ja stróżem aniołem, powiadam ja tobie. Ja stróżem aniołem oraz i strażnikiem, duszyczką do nieba, duszyczką do nieba, jestem przewodnikiem. Duszyczką do nieba, duszyczką do nieba, jestem przewodnikiem.
Oto ja służebnica Pana mego,
Niech się mi stanie według słowa Twego. Zdrowaś Maryjo, łaskiś pełna, Pan z Tobą.
Nie potrafi to ładnie tam da się
Dawaj.
Marku Albercie, ja Ciebie chrzczę w imię Ojca i Syna i Ducha Świętego.
One of the things I discovered in the Podhale was my grandmother's parents' graves, my great-grandparents. They were buried side by side, a grassy mound of dirt shaped like a horseshoe to cover both of them. A metal cross and silver-painted crucifix had marked the site since 1946, the year the last one died. This was 4 years before I was born. I visited the gravesite often. It wasn't far from where I lived. The cemetery is an important part of any little village. I used to wonder who these ancestors were, what their lives were like, and what were their last words to my grandmother when she left this place and them forever. I felt a strong connection to this spot, to these graves, to this place, to the soil, to the fields, to the open sky, to the surrounding mountains. To most old world people, the earth, the land, is everything. I wanted to mark my connection to the dead here, in this place, its earth, with a special ritual, something very personal. I wasn't sure what yet. Well, it took a few months to know what to do. One day I got a letter from an old friend of mine in America. I'd known him since I was 6 years old. He found some little Native American flints in his garden, was excited about these little things, and he sent me a few. They intrigued me, per the past, per the human struggle, per mortality. When they poured out of the envelope, I knew right away where they were going. They were magical. These bare flakes from the land where I lived sparkled with legends, myths, and dreams to me. I would plant them in my great-grandparents' graves to symbolize my reconnection to them. I went to the cemetery and carefully pushed the flint chips like seeds into the grave mound. I pushed a few flakes into the soil above the bones of each ancestor. What they would sprout, if anything, I didn't know. And I stood there for a while, listening to the birds, and then left. 3 days later, I was sitting at breakfast when Anna, my distant relative, told me something that nearly blew me off my chair. A man had died in the village, Andrzej's father, the husband of my mother's cousin. He was going to be buried on top of my great-grandparents' graves. I jumped up, got on my bicycle, and rode to the cemetery. Sure enough, my great-grandparents' grave marker was gone, and a new hole had been dug on top of them. I questioned the gravedigger about it, and there, at the bottom of the open grave, he pointed to old human bones. Space in the Podhale, I guess, and its cemeteries was at a premium these days. I was stunned by this. I had made my profoundly personal connection to this place and these ancestors, their graves, only 3 days earlier. I was nearly 50 years old, and it had taken me all of my life to do it. I almost missed the opportunity. I made it by 3 days.
Jo. Jo.
My mother and sister eventually visited me in the Podhale for a month, and we set out to research our ancestral history along both maternal and paternal lines. One of the people my mom visited, with a local guide, was her unknown first cousin, daughter of my grandfather's brother, a man who my mother also knew nothing about. My mother walked up to this cousin unannounced, like a meteor dropping out of the sky. I don't know if this woman had ever heard of my mom either. She was ill, however, had endured 2 strokes, and, especially tragically, was unable to give voice to this surprise reunion.
Twojej mamy, brata, córka.
No.
Ja,
tak.
Ja to... Ja. Żona, to ona taka sławna jest zespolanka, śpiewa w zespole, ładnie taki zespół mają, co te Gronicki.
To jest moja córka.
I don't want to misrepresent today's Podhale to you. It's easy to be fooled by the beauty of the place, especially as an outsider. I confess to this. Like anywhere else, the Podhale has problems. I was surprised to discover that the valleys amidst these hills have smog in the winter, mainly because people burn coal. Overpopulation has been an issue for centuries and is a reason why so many people leave the place. There's not enough land to support more farmers, and great changes are coming, enormous changes, rapidly. Returning Highlanders who work in America bring changes. The collapse of communism in the late 1980s, the institution of capitalism, and the influence of America and Western Europe have brought spectacular changes. The tourist town of Zakopane attracts millions of people in any given year. From everywhere, these people are only looking for a good time, and their needs and demands are those of brief visitors. They bring what tourists bring. Money for some, yes, but change too. Crime, pollution. During peak tourist times, Zakopane almost turns into a big circus. It's the heart of change in this region. I realized that I lived in the Polish Highlands at a time when I could catch the last glimpse of a lifestyle that would soon be gone. Not so long ago, tractors here were rare. Cars were out of the price range of many families, and with all of the changes, like everywhere else, the gap between rich and poor widens, and for many, the pressures to immigrate somewhere else, as they always have, continue to grow.
Jo.
cię powie syckać, gdy cię powie syckać. O! Duchowy ludzicki Kasie popodziały, gdy cię powie sycka Kasiło zleciały, gdy cię powie sycka Kasiło zleciały. Te liptowskie pany pięknie go witali. Te liptowskie pany pięknie go witali. Wito Janosiku w Toskuju zmyć się złapali.
Pierwsze mienucha, a potem gada.
Idą tacy za czasami rumieć, zaświeciła nad kolami powiedz. Ja się patrzę na nich, jak było ogniem zaświecą. Dolinami z pańskich dworów solne iskry polecą. Jak się pakłem nad graniami, jasnym ogniem zaświecą. Dolinami z pańskich dworów solne iskry polecą. Gorale, gorale, góralska muzyka, całe światło będzie z nimata wielika. Całe światło będzie z nimata wielika.
Sometimes I tried to imagine what it was like for my grandmother as she was carried away from the Podhale, leaving forever her family, the Highlander traditions, the land, and the looming mountains. I reflect on the many competing emotions that must have flickered in her heart. Fear, hope, worry, excitement, sorrow. The details of her travel experience are lost to history. Like millions of other immigrants, it is simply known that she made it to America. She married and had 10 children. 2 would be killed as American soldiers in World War II, uncles I never had the chance to meet. Most of her children married and had their own kids. A few branches in the family tree already have many generations. But few, if any, of my grandmother's descendants know anything about where she came from. And worse, few, if any, are interested. I recognize that nostalgia for the past is illusory. And the paradox of the Podhale is that such a lovely place has for centuries been sometimes a hell to live in. But when I strolled the springtime ridges and dales and watched, yes, from my comfort, the peasants toil in the fields, it was not bread that I sought. What I was searching for was a deeper sustenance. It may well be that all human beings everywhere live lives of myth and illusion, but even with the refrigerator full of food, the choice of 31 flavors of ice cream, and a 2-car garage, how one lifestyle is better in the big picture than another, I am not certain. All I know is that, yes, the wheel continues to turn for all of us. Something dies, and something rises to take its place. People die. Traditions die. I can't put it all together any better than you can, but I do know this. Collectively or individually, you have to know where you have been to make sense of where you are going.
Yeah.